Welcome to the Journal Editorial Report. I'm Stuart Varney, sitting in for Paul Gigot this week. After weeks of campaigning in New York, we are days away from the Empire State primary. Donald Trump has been pounding Ted Cruz and John Kasich in his home state, hoping to get 50% of the Republican vote and win all 95 delegates up for grabs. A new Siena College poll shows Trump with a 23-point lead in New York. Here with a preview of the April 19th primary and beyond, Wall Street columnist and deputy editor Dan Henninger, assistant editorial page editor James Freeman, and columnist Mary Kissel. Dan, to you first. This New York Republican primary is all about delegates, isn't it?
Mainly about delegates and some status as well, Stuart. But if there's one number for people to watch Tuesday night, it is 50. Because if Donald Trump goes over 50 in the state, then he gets the state delegates. But in each of the congressional districts, if you go over 50%, you get all three of the delegates, okay? That's how he would sweep to 95. If he is under 40, either in the statewide or in any of these districts, then Ted Cruz and John Kasich will be picking up individual delegates in districts around the state. And that's what Ted Cruz is in this state to do, simply to accumulate delegates and deprive Trump of any delegates as well. One third thing is second place. If Ted Cruz comes in third or John Kasich comes in third, they're not going to have bragging rights going into next week's primaries in Pennsylvania, Delaware, Connecticut, and Maryland.
So momentum and stature has got a lot to do with this. Just almost.
You do not want to come in third in the New York primary.
No, you don't. That's for sure. Well, you want Kasich to drop out, don't you?
Well, yeah, I think even a kind of an unimpressive second over Cruz is not really a victory for him. These are supposed to be, this week and next week, are supposed to be John Kasich's moment. This is why he stayed in the race, even though he's much further behind Cruz than Cruz is behind Trump. The reason he stayed in, New York this week, then Maryland and Pennsylvania. And if you look at these polls, Kasich has got a slight lead on Cruz, or even in some places behind. I think there's really no premise to the Kasich candidacy if he is not winning big over Cruz in these states kind of built for him.
Mary, Cruz is not doing well in the New York primary polling thus far.
Yeah, but Cruz is being strategic, as he's been throughout this campaign. He's got a very professional campaign staff. Well, no, that's true. You don't want to be third. But for example, Cruz has come in and he's targeted Democratic districts in Manhattan, where there's very small numbers of Republicans. These are areas in the Bronx areas, in Brooklyn, some areas outside of Albany, where he has a good chance of getting perhaps over 50% and picking up some delegates.
And just to be clear, first place is not necessarily a victory for Donald Trump. This is his home turf. Cruz won big in Texas. Even Kasich was able to win his home state, take all those delegates in Ohio. So I think anything less than a sweep for Trump is not a victory.
Well, he's unlikely to get a sweep of all 95 delegates because, as Dan said, you'd have to get 50% in every single congressional district to sweep the lot. But if he wins by, the polls showing at the moment, winning by 30 points, some polls showing that far ahead, that is a convincing win for him, isn't it?
Well, it's all about going to Cleveland and how many delegates you have. I mean, there's a point beyond which if Donald Trump has over 1,000 delegates, or if he gets up around 1,100, the argument that his camp is going to make is you cannot deny Mr. Trump the nomination if he gets that close in Cleveland.
Well, that's just not how the rules work, though, Dan.
I mean, on the votes in Cleveland.
He makes that argument, but the rules have been set for a long time, and winning a plurality is simply not enough. Just want to make a brief comment about John Kasich. You know, he hasn't won a delegate since, what, March 15th? It's one thing to say, well, I'm going to beat Hillary Clinton in a theoretical general election poll many months down the road, but one of these days, people are going to ask, well, then why didn't voters vote for you? Show us the numbers.
I've got to ask this. Do you think that Donald Trump has entered a new phase of his campaign? I noticed that the other night he was reading from notes. It wasn't all extraneous, off-the-cuff remarks. There were no off-the-cuff insults. He's trying to calm it down a little bit. He's got a new campaign staff. I think he wants to look more presidential.
Yeah,
I know you don't think much to him, but would you go along with that it's succeeding a little?
That's certainly the strategy, and he's certainly talking about doing more prepared speeches, and his campaign is talking about that. Whether he has the discipline to stick to it is a big question. So far, he hasn't done that. But I think also the problem with that strategy is it's coming very late in the game, not just in the campaign, but he's a guy over the years who has defined himself very sharply, very comprehensively. Everyone in America basically has an opinion on him now. Most of them don't like him. So I don't think prepared texts are going to turn around most of those people, and that's the problem with nominating him.
You're all laughing here.
Well, there's also a lot of turmoil within the Trump campaign. He's brought in some longtime Washington insiders.
He's brought professionals in.
Well, a lot of reports, though, of problems there. It reminds me of Hillary Clinton, the firing of Mark Penn back in 2008. So he's brought in pros, but will they right the ship? I think it's very late, as James said.
Trump's genius is that he is connected to people by doing what he's been doing. He has said that. This is why people like me. And the question is, if he pivots to this more formalized candidacy, is he going to start losing some of those people?
That's the whole point, isn't it? He's an entertainer.
Yeah.
He's brilliant on television. If he adopts a new format, is he still brilliant on television?
We'll find out.
Jury is out. All right. Thanks, everybody. Now, when we